You may be a CEO, you may be a senior executive, you could be a lawyer, an accountant, a consultant, somewhere where your label really identifies you. And it's very difficult to move from there to create a new identity, but it can be done. During our careers, we had an identity and we felt like we knew who we were, but that all changed on our last day of work.
You know, we had titles, reputations. We certainly had personal branding. We had teams that we led. But when we walked out of the door that last day, all of that changed completely.
This identity that we created for ourselves over decades will not serve us in retirement. And we can't spend the rest of our lives talking about who we used to be.
That was my dad.
The used to.
I used to do this and I used to do that, because he never really got into what we're talking about today, which is we really want you to know these 4 things about yourself before you get into retirement. And the first one is, who are you going to be in retirement? What is your new identity going to be? The second thing is, we want you to explore some new hobbies, or hobbies period if you have none.
The third thing is, we want to talk about cultivating new friendships, revitalizing old friendships, and creating your community. And the fourth thing is navigating the right amount of time that you spend with your partner.
And the reason we bring these up today, because we didn't really spend a lot of time on these 4 things until after we retired.
Right.
You know, we're 4 years into it now. But if you can really master these 4 things before you retire, it will be so much better for you. And we have a good example. We have a client whose name is Tom. We'll call him Dr. Tom because he was a doctor. He came to us because he was struggling. He wanted to retire, but he really was afraid. He was afraid to make that plunge into retirement for a couple of reasons. The first one, his identity as a doctor is tied into saving people's lives. He must have saved hundreds, if not thousands of lives during his 45-year career as a doctor. So the question is, how do you transition out of that, and what do you transition into? So he was concerned about that. The second thing is, because he works so hard, he has a very small friend group, and he was worried about who he was going to hang out with.
You know, the third thing he came to us with was he had a wife who was robust and energetic and fully engaged in her own retirement. And he hadn't spent a lot of time cultivating his entry into her world.
And she didn't really want him in it, to be fair.
Not true.
Well, not full time.
The fourth thing was, you know, he felt as if he missed his children's lives. And now he had adult children who had their own lives. But he was working so hard and so busy saving lives and being a doctor that he missed a big chunk of it. And the last thing was, he had no time for hobbies. He didn't even know what he liked to do. He didn't know what he didn't like to do.
He worked.
He didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So we worked with him, and now he has a retirement and a full life. And that way, he's a bit of a case study for us.
Yeah. So and by the way, if you're new here, we want to first of all thank you for watching our channel. And we would appreciate it if you could subscribe and share this as well with your friends. If you're seeing value in it, we want you to share it because we want to help as many people as we can.
So let's go back to our case study, Dr. Tom. The first thing Mark talked about that he was really having a hard time with was his identity. Because if you think about it, as a doctor, he had a very specific identity. Everything he did was tied to being Dr. Tom.
Right.
You know, that may be you too. You may be a CEO, you may be a senior executive, you could be a lawyer, an accountant, a consultant, somewhere where your label really identifies you. And it's very difficult to move from there to create a new identity, but it can be done.
Yeah, and this is a difficult transition, and we've got some videos on that. We'll leave links below on making this transition where you have to let go of the old identity, then you're in a neutral zone and create a new identity. So it's really important to get that right. But working with him, we did that. The first thing he did was he wrote a book. He became an author. He wrote his life story of his 40-year career, and he's planning to write more books. But now he's taken this book that he has, and he speaks to other retiring doctors to
Right.
help them make the transition. He mentors them, he coaches them, but he's really holding himself up as an expert in helping doctors make the transition away from their careers.
Which has been a whole identity and brand shift for him, which has been really remarkable to see. You know, it brings to mind to me another client, Anna, who was a senior level executive at Verizon and retired and wasn't sure what to do herself. She didn't have the label, right? She wasn't a doctor or a lawyer, you know, or an accountant, but she was a senior level executive in the HR profession. She started a coaching and mentoring business with an old friend of hers in order to further her learning, further her growth, and share her wisdom. So that was another, you know, someone you could think of who moved on from their identity.
Yeah, my dad moved on from CEO of his company and he put retired on his business card.
Ugh.
And that's,
I don't recommend that.
I don't recommend it either, but that's what he did.
Right.
And, you know, he crashed and burned. You'll hear us talk about him a lot on our videos, but that was his thing. He just wanted to be retired.
Right.
And it didn't last very long,
No, it didn't.
unfortunately. But
It
that's
didn't.
not a good plan.
Right.
But the second area we worked on with Dr. Tom was his hobbies, because he had none.
Right.
He did a couple of things. He, you know, maybe liked gardening, but not really. But what he did was he poured himself into golf. He joined a club, he took lessons, he joined the weekly men's group. And that gave him a couple of things. It gave him the ability to walk, obviously, around and do some exercise. It gave him an entire community of new friends. He now golfs a couple times a week, which is plenty for him. And he's also become close to a few other retired doctors at the club. So that worked out really well for him.
Some really great shared community by himself
Yeah.
as he was finding his way. I thought it was also interesting that he and his wife decided to take cooking lessons together. Cooking had always been in her wheelhouse. And while people think that because activities are in your wheelhouse, and I think this happens to women a lot, that you love it because you do it. And, you know, come to find out she didn't love it.
No.
But she loved sharing the experience with him. So they started taking cooking lessons together. And that was fun. It was planned. It was structured. And it was something new that they could do together. And that's always important to find.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Nat, who was one of my dad's ex-partners. And he retired, went to Florida. And he was always a model train enthusiast. And when he got down there, he wasn't really sure what to do. He started volunteering in a nonprofit. And they found out he had this unique talent to build models. So they hired him, actually paid him.
A museum, right?
To build models for a museum, historical buildings that were down there, boats and trains from the past. So he built these things. And these hobbies for Dr. Tom and Nat and your friend at Verizon, it fills their time, it gives them fulfillment, brings joy and community,
Right.
and a huge sense of accomplishment.
Right. So the next thing that we really wanted to focus on was this idea of cultivating relationships. You know, who's your squad? Who's your community? And, you know, Dr. Tom did a few things right. You know, we mentioned that he played golf and he also joined some nonprofit boards, which he was able to lend his expertise to. You know, in the medical industry, he became a world-renowned surgeon, so he was tapped on for different papers and reports. And it gave him immediate access to other retired doctors, other people in his field, where they could find ways to share their wisdom and experience and knowledge all together.
Right, and the other board he joined was one in the arts, which gave him an
That's
entirely new community of people. And we have another client who was struggling a little bit with relationships. And he did 5 things. He did
Very deliberate.
very deliberate.
Yeah.
He created 5 new communities, and they really were from the past. He re-engaged with his college fraternity. He re-engaged with the men and women that graduated with him in graduate school. He has golf buddies, which is great, and he goes on a couple trips a year. And then he was in London for 10 years building a business, and he's gone back now once a year to have a reunion with all of those workers. And then he's got another group of friends. He and his wife have friends who are couples. And it really has enhanced his whole thing of having a great bucket of great relationships.
Absolutely. Cultivating your community in this phase of life is really important. So start to put some thought around that. The next thing we're going to talk about is spending the right amount of time now that you're retired and maybe your spouse is also retired. You know, this is a hard transition, and, you know, I know we make light of it and we make jokes about it, but it is a hard transition, and it's better to recognize this earlier rather than later. And for us, we had to really jump in and work on. And one of the things we asked Dr. Tom to work on was his communication skills and tools. What did he have in his back pocket that he could pull forward that would help him and his wife communicate better?
Yeah, he needed more patience. He needed a plan. What happens is there's often misaligned expectations between one partner and the other.
Also, some unsolicited advice.
Well, yeah, I think you should stop that with me, actually.
Really?
When you think about it, yeah. But sticking your nose into other people's business. I am the way I am. You are the way you are. We have to be careful with that. It's not all of a sudden, you're married for 40 years and then you have this free time spending together and you start to notice things you didn't notice before. That's not a time to ask them to change.
Right. I mean, the reality for Dr. Tom was during his career, he was only really with his wife maybe at nights and weekends when he wasn't working. So it was really a limited time. It was quality time, and he did reinforce that. But when he wasn't on call, that was the only time he had, with her.
And here's what they did. So they each had their own friends, their own hobbies, and volunteering obligation, and that filled a good part of the week for them individually. But then they had a couple things they did together, which really is what you need to do. You need to have your own stuff and together stuff.
Right, because you have to remember, if your spouse or partner retires before you, or if you're the spouse or partner retiring, later, both of you have your own jam going. You have your own circle, you have your own routines and patterns and habits. But together, Tom and his wife worked on their kids and their grandkids. They did some cooking together. They added pickleball recently, which we keep threatening to do, but we haven't done.
And they're thriving right now.
They
really are. And entering retirement is fun. It's exciting and it can be liberating. But really being thoughtful about your new identity, creating new friendships, finding new hobbies, and getting the right amount of time with your partner is critical.
Hey, listen, if you enjoyed this, please share with your friends, and also please subscribe by clicking the subscribe button below.
And also, don't forget to join our free Facebook community. The link is in the notes below.
Almost 700 people.
Almost 700 people. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to being with you again soon.